came from our understanding of our economy. Even the word economy and the concept of economics is based on lack. When you talk about economizing, you're talking about not having enough. And you say, well, where did this concept come from when we started really using it with our modern world? And it came from a book from Adam Smith called The Wealth of Nations. And The Wealth of Nations is about the management of scarce resources, which is what economics is about. Talking about labor as a scarce resource, is talking about, like our natural resources in our country. It's the wealth of nations. It's how the nations create that wealth. And the interesting thing about that idea of scarcity and about there not being enough is if you're living in an economic structure, there never is going to be enough, because it's all based on the fact that things are scarce, and it's all based on the supply and demand. And the less supply you have, the more that things are going to cost. What's so interesting is that we're living in a totally different world today, which is not an economic model. In fact, the model which actually suits it much more effectively is not an economy, it's an ecology. Because an economy is based on lack, whereas an ecology is based on abundance. You find them naturally in nature. Darwinian theory, which is all about kind of like, the survival of the fittest, has been misinterpreted within an economy, which is like, we've got to beat the competition. So it's all about competition. But if you've ever been to Africa, if you've ever actually gone to where there's lions coexisting with antelope, it isn't like survival of the fittest, the lions ate all the antelope. The lions are making sure there's still enough antelope for tomorrow. They're creating a thriving ecology where they'll all be sharing and giving and taking in some way, but it's for the better of the whole. So the difference of an economy which is about a lack and an ecology which is about abundance, or about one which is about competition and one which is about collaboration, is that we're moving from an economic mindset to an ecological mindset. We're moving in terms of the shift from one to the other. Another way to look at this is, for many of us, we think money is scarce. So as a result of that, we've got to go chasing it. When we realize that value is abundant, and that there are certain values that the more you share them, they don't go down, they actually go up. If I share an idea with you, that idea didn't end up smaller or less. It actually grew, because now we both are sharing that idea. If I share a connection that I have with you, that doesn't actually mean the connection is less. It actually improves it, not just from you now having that connection, but that person I know now also knowing you. So we can see entrepreneurs are every day sharing things, and from the sharing, they don't become less, they actually become more. We can share trust, we can share empowerment. And when we start using these as our commodities that we grow, everything transforms. With money, there is an element of money and the link to value, which, because this hasn't been taught at schools, makes it very challenging for us. Money actually comes in one of 10 hierarchies of value, which within each level of the spectrum come into play. And when you understand those levels, we understand straight away how even people who have no money can actually get on the ladder and start already leveraging value that they have. And just go through them really quickly. There are 4 types of value in which money actually flows. The first 2 are the ones that people are usually very familiar with. And these ones we call retail values. Retail values are where you spend the money and the money doesn't come back. Like you go and you buy a dinner, right? You get the food, but you don't get the money back. Most of us are used to working with retail value, which is why we just see money going one way. It never comes back to us again. We're buying all these different things. And retail value comes in one of 2 forms. It either comes in the value of things we need or the things we want. There used to be a time when we were only really focused at things we need, especially in tough times like war, where we'll just kind of like go and get the minimum to be able to eat, to be able to like look after ourselves. But we're living in a consumer society today, which is much more about things we want. And the unfortunate thing is the desire for us to want things has gone up so much, many of us are broke because of it, right? We've got lots of things, but we don't have the money. Those 2, as long as you're in that, are going to keep you in a trap of poverty, or at least just like at survivor level. Entrepreneurs don't focus their time in that area. They always elevate up to the next 2, which are not retail values, they're wholesale values. The difference of retail value and wholesale values are the ones in which when you put the money in, you actually get the money back with more. So within wholesale values, there's 2 types. And I've seen people who are movie makers who have ended up following this chain. I've seen people who are a retailer, someone who's a trader, that just change and shift from one to the other. So wholesale value is where you're putting money in, you're going to get value out, and you're going to get the money back with more. One type of wholesale value is component value, which is where you're actually, like for example, if someone's got a job, what's happened is that your boss has bought your time for component value. They're actually using that time, and they're expecting to make more money from your time than you can. They're expecting to turn it into a product or into a service, and if they can't, you'll lose your job. So there's an element of component value, which if you start seeing how you can actually take what you've got and give it to someone else in a way that they can use that and add more value into it. And every company, Microsoft does this, Apple does this. That's why you have an entire app community for your mobile phone. They've created component value that other people can use in order for them to build their businesses as well. And then the next one is investment value, which is where 95% of all the money in the world flows through these two. Investment value is the currency market, the property market. It's where you don't even need to create anything. You can just put the money in, and over time, if you're putting it in the right thing, you'll see it go up. Sometimes it goes down, comes back up again, but fundamentally, entrepreneurs are consumers of wholesale value. So every time I put $1 into something, I'm getting more than $1 back, and I'm adding value to the whole market at the same time. Right? Playing a game of football where you're passing the ball on is also wholesale value because you get to have the ball coming back. Retail value is a different thing. It's when you hit the ball and it goes into the crowd and it never comes back again. So a lot of us, we're used to giving to people that aren't even playing the game and wondering why the giving doesn't come back, as opposed to giving within the people that are playing the same game as us. Now, those four, you could think, well, that's all fine, but you need money to get on that ladder. So what do you do if you don't have money? Well, you realize that every day you've got the same 24 hours of time as every other person on the planet. Like, none of us are wealthier than anyone else when it comes to our most precious asset, which is our time. And there are ways for us to turn that time into money. And the way that we do that is we invest it in values that we have, and as we go up the spectrum, these become more and more powerful. And there are 6 values, which are the first 6 out of 10, in which all these 6 create the attraction and the money you need, and all it takes is your time to actually create these 6. So those 6, the first 2 are your passions and your talents. These are called your core values because we were born with them. When we were kids, we already were doing things we're passionate about. We were doing the things that were already our natural talent. It was only when we went to school and we had to do things that we weren't so good at, we forgot about those. Or we got teased, or we had real pressure of some sort or another, and so we just kind of got our passions to go a little lower, or we didn't worry about the talents because we had to focus on things we weren't so good at. Passions and talents are things we go through life rediscovering, which means we have got to unlearn everything we know to be able to get to those 2. But when we start really focusing on that, when we show up with someone new and we're showing through our lens of our passions, our talents, they want to come and meet us again. They want to work with us. When you get those 2, you can go so far in life. You can connect up and you can find yourself a team to work with, but that doesn't mean you get to the second step removed. And the second step removed is the next step out, where it's not the people you meet, the people you know that are helping you. It's the people that you know sharing with the people you don't know, which is of course getting to many more people. To do that, it's the next 2 of the values, which is number 1, your network, and number 2, your knowledge. Because if I meet someone and they have a certain network that I know one of my friends would be interested in, I wouldn't just go and say, oh, you must meet with such and such because they're passionate. But I would say, oh, you meet with them because they know someone you'd need to know. Or knowledge, they know something that could really help you. Most of us have resumes, or we have CVs that we've actually created for our job, which is based on 2 things. It's all about what do we know, it's about who we know. And it doesn't really share that much about our passions and our talents, which is why many people have gone down the line with these mid values, which are the ones we need to acquire through life, acquiring like crazy, forgetting about their passions and talents, running like crazy to kind of go and get a job that fits their knowledge and their network, and they've got an empty shell because in the middle of it, they don't even enjoy what they're doing anymore. Once you come back and you actually get the first part solid, you create much more attraction, and more importantly, then you build your knowledge and network, and for many of us, that alone can double it. And then we get to the final 2, which are the biggest of all. This is when you get the people who you don't know speaking to the people who you don't know about you. So many of us have read a book about someone who never has met us, and we've gone and recommended someone else to read it. I find with some of the things that I share, people will go out, share it with someone else, and then that person will share it with someone further. This is when you get out much, much further. And it isn't because of my passions, it isn't because even of my knowledge, my network. It's because of the final 2, which are our key values, which is your character and your purpose. Character is your conduct. We hear an amazing story of someone who just went through all this hardship and then made a success of their lives, and they're showing up in a certain way. We're like, this is someone who really resonates at a much deeper level with people who can then share with someone else. And purpose is about contribution. So what's the difference you're making in your life? We aren't born with those, so we don't go back to rediscover them. Our job is to go out there and discover them for the first time. Why do I call it 3 steps removed? Because if you actually think of a tree and you're looking for the fruit's not on the trunk. right? You go from the trunk out to the branches, and you've actually gone out. The fruit's not even there. It's the third step removed, which is not the people you know, but the people you know sharing with people you don't know, and then them sharing it out to get to the twigs at the ends of those branches, and that's where all the fruit is. All of our wealth is 3 steps removed. Most of us are chasing it with whoever we can meet, with a job application, as opposed to actually starting to build that garden, which creates that attraction by understanding there's a structure to all wealth. We can create flow in any aspect by using the laws of nature, and we can create flow within our own lives, within our own wealth, by following those same structures, so that you don't have to worry, am I going to make it or not? You're just saying now, it's just a matter of when.